Hey, Slater Crusaders, America's the greatest country in the world. Here we are. It is debate night. Tonight, coming up, 7 o'clock, Jesse Kelly is going to give us his pregame. And then 8 o'clock live, we got Bill O'Reilly. Then the debate, of course, we're going to be airing here at 9 o'clock in its entirety. And right after that, we're going to go back to Bill O'Reilly for his post-debate analysis. So grateful you're here. And of course, grateful you're going to be watching the debate here tonight as well. This is it. The campaign officially begins. It's all very exciting. This could be the biggest night in political history. This could be the massive swing in momentum that the president needs to stay in power for another 4 years against all odds, against all the media and the social forces working against him. This could be the moment when Joe Biden passes out, for the love of Pete, where his mental acuity is exposed as lacking, where his entire campaign crumbles before the American people's eyes, or nothing. It could just be a pile of nothing, and doesn't do anything, and no one remembers it, and it's just a huge waste of 90 minutes. I want to get excited, and of course I'm going to watch, but I have to, every time I get excited, I've been excited for like a week or two. Every time I get excited, I have to remind myself, it'll probably be nothing. I had a pivotal, life-changing moment. May 2nd, 2015. I'll never forget it. It was a day that I and the country was looking forward to for months, and the weeks of buildup to it in particular, but years in the making, a once-in-a-lifetime battle. I think, like without a doubt, I'd say the most anticipated sporting event in history. It made $410 million in pay-per-view revenue. Tickets sold out in 1 minute. I'm not kidding. 1 minute, tickets were sold out. I had a gala. I was at a gala with my wife, downtown San Diego. Big, beautiful, whole big thing. To my great shame, we left early. We were having a wonderful time, and we had to we snuck out to leave. So that I'm so ashamed that we did that. But we had to leave early so that we could get home and watch the big, historic, life-changing Mayweather-Pacquiao fight. And what a boring piece of crap that was. It was the Mayweather-Pacquiao Dancing with the Stars. Total waste of time. I've never had so much anticipation for something, and I just fell for it. I fell for it. I get swept up in it. Never have I felt such a high of anticipation and then had such a massive letdown. And I vowed from that moment, I'll never forget this. I vowed from that moment to never get excited about anything ever again. And I got to catch myself with this debate. Because truly, I'm not joking. I blow this up in my head, like I blew up the Mayweather fight. Right? I'm thinking Trump is gonna come out swinging. It'll be a fury of blows, and Biden won't even know what's happening. Like literally, he'll forget where he is. Right? Like maybe he will literally say, "Wait, where am I?" And the Democrats will just be in a panic, and Van Jones afterwards will be the sage of truth for the Democratic Party and say, Democrats, fellow Democrats, it's undeniable. This man is physically unfit to be president. And the Democrats for the next 35 days are scrambling to find a replacement for Joe Biden because he clearly cannot continue to run anymore. The campaign's been trying to hide him for weeks, and they can't hide him anymore. He's got this debate, and he's just going to blow it tonight. Look what happened in front of the lights. Wow, he can't be president. His entire 47 years career in D.C. collapsing before our eyes in just a matter of hours. And Trump waltzes in. He runs unopposed. They canceled the election because there is no election anymore. Joe Biden has conceded the race already. He dropped out. That's how I'm building it up in my head. Just like I built up Mayweather-Pacquiao. It's just going to be, there's going to be punching, not a fury of blows, and the fight is going to be amazing and epic, and it stunk. So it can either be this big thing I'm building it up to be where Biden will forget, he'll forget where he is. Or Trump will like mumble his way through some points and not do that great of a job because he's never really done great in any debate, really. And also Reagan, W, and Obama all did pretty badly in their first debate as president. So he'll just sort of mumble his way through and miss a lot of opportunities, and I'll get frustrated by it. And the bar for Biden is so incredibly low that he could literally stay standing for 90 minutes, and the media will paint him out to be the greatest orator since Cicero. He's the Demosthenes of our day, sleepy Joe Biden. Look, he stood for 90 minutes. Can you believe it? That's probably what's going to happen, right? And no one's going to change their mind, and the media is just going to be total hacks about everything afterwards, and it's just going to frustrate me that we can live in a country where reality doesn't matter, where two people can be watching the same screen and not only have two different opinions. I mean, that's fine, of course, but just like hear completely different things. Like they're watching two totally different realities. Maybe I'm getting too negative here. Am I too cynical? Here, do you remember this guy? This guy was the winner of the second presidential debate in, was that 2016 or 2012? Was Ken Bone in the 2016? Well, that's my point. Remember Ken Bone? Poor guy asked a question about energy or something, and America fell in love with that lovable guy. And then the next day, the media found some old anonymous comments that he put on Reddit about Jennifer Lawrence's nude photos and arguing that killing Trayvon Martin was justified. So America loved Ken Bone, and then we hated Ken Bone. And I don't know if we're supposed to love him now again. I haven't checked up on that. I'm not sure. I bring that up because we're not a very serious people, are we? Right? Ken Bone was the star of the debate. These debates are a very bad way of picking our next president because it's all about the quip. That's what it's all about. It's all about the quip. Everyone's looking for the quip. We got 90 minutes, and the media the next day, after 90 minutes, they're going to boil it all down to a quip. Who's got the best quip? Who's got the best quick, witty remark? Remember this one from 2016?
Can fact check him in real time. Last time at the first debate, we had millions of people fact checking, so I expect we'll have millions more fact checking because, you know, it's just awfully good that someone with the temperament of Donald Trump is not in charge of the law in our country.
Yeah, because you'd be in jail.
Secretary Clinton.
Oh, what a quip! What a quip! But let's take some self-reflection about how stupid we are as a people and how much the system has so devolved where the winner of the debate of the President of the United States of America will be who can get in the best quip, who can make the most viral moment. And it's not even gonna be, like, it's one thing, so obviously, like, in an ideal world, like, the winner should be the person who could best formulate their vision and ideas and policies and defend, blah, 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 right? But like, we're like so far past that. I mean, Ken Bone was the winner of the, so we've devolved it into who can get the best quip. But now it's even lower than that. Now it's like, remember when Marco Rubio was doing the rebuttal to the President's State of the Union or something, and he drank water a lot or something. Do you remember? I forget remember Rubio like drank a lot of water. So it's not even a quip. It's like stupid. It's even lower. You don't have to say anything. And that's what we base this on. That's stupid. This is a stupid thing that we do. Here's Hillary trying to get a quip in 2016 as well.
In fact, it would be the most extreme version, the biggest tax cuts for the top percent of the people in this country than we've ever had. I call it trumped up trickle down because that's exactly what it would be.
Oh! Right off the old dome piece right there, Hillary. Stuff trickled down. So the problem is, these campaigns, they know that the quip is all that matters, so they rehearse the quips. So it's one thing, it's bad enough that we got like rehearsed talking points, now we get rehearsed quips. And it's been that way for a long time. So Ronald Reagan, he didn't want to do any debate prep. And the first debate went horribly for him. So then he went back and started doing debate prep, and it still went terrible. And the campaign team actually started to panic. So they brought in Roger Ailes to watch one of the practice sessions. And Roger Ailes said it was very obvious that Ronald Reagan did not want to be doing this. And they asked a question to the person who was sitting in for Mondale, and that guy, he was a congressman, that guy gave a perfect answer. It's like a perfect, flawless answer. And Reagan's rebuttal, according to Ailes, was ad-libbed and fumbled. And Ailes told the campaign, he said, this next debate's gonna be a disaster if you keep this up. So Ailes, he stopped it. He stayed in the middle of the debate prep. He canceled the whole thing and said, everybody go home. And he spent 30 minutes with Ronald Reagan alone. And Ailes said, Reagan, my man, you got elected on themes. Every time you're asked a question, relate it to one of your themes. He said, and the actual quote is, what I want you to do is get back to your instincts. Just say what comes to you out of your experience. In other words, tell stories, which is what we say all the time. Remember back during the RNC, all we talked about was tell stories, tell stories. So that's what Ailes was saying. He's like, hey, listen, Reagan, just tell stories, tell stories. So Reagan relaxed. He started to pepper him. Ailes started to pepper him with a bunch of different questions, and Reagan's goal was to quickly get to the theme and quickly get to a story. And Ailes, one of the questions was, President Reagan, some people say you're too old for the job. That's what Ailes asked him. And Reagan smiled and said, well, actually, Roger, there's an old line that I've used before. Here it is in action.
You already are the oldest president in history, and some of your staff say you were tired after your most recent encounter with Mr. Mondale. I recall yet that President Kennedy had to go for days on end with very little sleep during the Cuba Missile Crisis. Is there any doubt in your mind that you would be able to function in such circumstances?
Not at all, Mr. Truitt, and I want you to know that also I will not make age an issue of this campaign. I am not going to exploit for political purposes my opponent's youth and inexperience.
Probably one of the most famous. We've all heard it before, and it felt I remembered it being very impromptu, but now that you know it was rehearsed, it seems very rehearsed. He actually stumbles over a word or two, sort of like Hillary did with her trumped up trickle-down thing, right? Same thing, Reagan's "there you go again" line, that was rehearsed as well. Maybe the most famous debate quip was in the vice presidential debate. It was Dan Quayle, and he was trying to compare himself to JFK, and Lloyd Benson said, I knew Jack Kennedy. Jack Kennedy was a friend of mine. Senator, you're no Jack Kennedy. That was rehearsed. It's all rehearsed. We'll see if Biden, who's used a teleprompter for TV interviews, we'll see if he can remember the quiz. So in short, Trump needs to stay on the offense, needs to get Joe to defend the riots, defend the violence, defend his comments on China. In 2011, Biden said a rising China is a positive development, not only for China, but for America, but for the world. Have Biden defend his foundation support for the transition of children, the gender transition for children. Have Biden defend moving money around in his family into an S corp to avoid paying taxes. Have Biden defend Hunter. Defend the decades of endless wars that Biden has supported. Trump needs to prove that he's the peace president. Have Biden defend when Trump banned flights from China, Biden called it xenophobic and fear-mongering. Get Biden to defend these things always. Always Trump needs to be on the offense. Get Biden on the defensive because he'll get angry. And Trump always does a good job staying cool during these debates, maybe too cool. But get Biden to be on the defense, and who knows, maybe Trump will get in a good quip. And I don't know, maybe it'll be way better than the Mayweather Pacquiao experience. Maybe it'll be a good fight. And I can have a reason to get excited about things again. Again, coming up, Jesse Kelly, 7 o'clock. And then O'Reilly, live pre-debate coverage, 8 o'clock. And then O'Reilly, right after the debate, right here on The First. True story. Spread the word. Hey, Slater Crusaders, let's talk more debate prep with John Phillips. He's radio host at KABC in LA. He's also a writer at the columnist at the LA Daily News. John Phillips, how are you, brother?
Great, thanks for having me.
Good, man. Good to talk to you. So, before we even talk about what Biden needs to do or what Trump needs to do, like, what's your thoughts on debates in general and what we're headed into, what we're about to see here soon?
Well, I think this year it matters more than other years because typically you see them on the campaign trail, you see them talking to people, answering questions off the cuff. They do hostile interviews sometimes, they do friendly interviews that go haywire. This year we've had Joe Biden being an indoor cat where he hasn't left his man cave. And you've got President Trump out there doing these press conferences every day. So as a general rule, I think we've kind of been there, done that. But this year, it's really our first introduction to Joe Biden.
Wow, that's so amazing. That's so interesting. Joe, is it fair to say that Biden's really benefited from COVID? I mean, when it pertains to not needing to go places.
Oh, yeah. Well, he wakes up, he does one interview on CNN or MSNBC, and he goes back to his jar of formaldehyde, and that's the end of that. So this is really his first test that we're going to see live on television.
If I remember right, he did pretty, well, I don't know. How did he do in the last couple debates? Democrat
Well,
debates.
in the primary this cycle, he was one of two things. He either looked like he was about ready to fall asleep, and every time he took a sip of that Avion, it looked like a cappuccino that Bill Cosby made, and he was about ready to start sawing logs. And then you had other times where he was going 900 miles an hour a minute, which is, I think, why President Trump wants him to take a drug test. So you don't know which Joe Biden is going to show up tonight. My guess is they're going to have him very well prepared. And by that, I mean he's going to keep his answers very short. He's going to have a stock answer on just about every subject. So if they bring up healthcare, he has an answer. And if he doesn't like the question that he specifically asked or has never heard about it, he's just going to answer the question he wished he was asked. And the media won't call him out. Neither will Chris Wallace.
So what does Trump do? That's right. I think that's right. So what does Trump do in response to that? So to the point where he doesn't look like a mean person or like he's picking on Biden. How does Trump handle that?
You know, you got to be very careful with that. I know you're in California. I'm in California. There was a guy in the state assembly by the name of Chet Ray who literally had a room temperature IQ, was the dumbest person I'm aware of who was ever elected to office. And he went up to the California Assembly, represented the county where I'm from, actually. And his staff wrote out his opening speech on these cue cards. And he was reading the speech, and he finished the speech, but wasn't really paying attention to what he was saying, and just read it again. And then he was getting ready to read it a third time because he didn't know that the speech ended a second time, and the speaker just cut off his microphone. Well, a friend of mine was teaching political science, told the kids about this. They said there's no way this could be true. She mocked him, made fun of him, brought him to the class to speak to the class so they could see before their eyes a truly stupid person who's writing laws that they have to live by. And he was this sweet old man. And after he left, they said, how could you be so mean to him? How could you be so abusive to this poor man? So there is a sympathy factor if Trump looks too abusive to Joe Biden that I think will play. So you have to just, I think, take the attitude of, oh, poor Joe, you don't understand, but this is the way it is. If you come out and say, you're senile, you're demented, we should put you in the button, that's going to backfire badly.
First of all, I'm stealing that line, room temperature IQ. But second of all, like, what a ridiculous state of affairs we're in right now. Where we're saying, hey, President of the United States, don't call your opponent senile and demented. Play it more gingerly. Jeez. Yeah. Okay. All right.
On that.
What, I don't even know where to go from here. What would be an issue that you think Trump could hit Biden on that would land?
Law and order. because Joe Biden was so slow in coming out and condemning all of the rioters, all of the looters. You had Kamala Harris, who was meeting with the families, saying wonderful things about people who we know are not wonderful people. That is a real Achilles heel for him. And if you look at the polls, there's a huge difference in polls in terms of what the matchup is, if it's head-to-head or it's head-to-head with all the third-party candidates. And the reason that the third-party candidates are doing so well this cycle and hurting Joe Biden is because it gives the Bernie people a place to go. Biden's in a really odd place right now where he has to appeal to the middle of the country, those middle Western states, specifically the single moms and white college-educated women. But he also has to throw some red meat to the Bernie people without alienating either one. That's the tightrope he has to walk. And the issue that presents the biggest challenge for him is law and order, because they are on completely opposite sides on that. And for suburban women, it scares the living hell out of them. I mean, it's not just something on TV that they're watching. That's their pharmacy burning down. That's their grocery store burning down. It's something very personal to them.
Yeah, and the fact that it happened in Kenosha, like that's super symbolic that it's not just in crazy Seattle. Okay, so that's really interesting what you said about the polls that are head-to-head. Right, so you're saying if it's who you're going to vote for, Biden or Trump, it's whatever it is. But if it's here's your slate of candidates you can choose from, you're saying the polls are much closer.
They are, and then when you look at the purple states, they're within the margin of error in virtually all of them. And really, people just understand what polls are saying. They look at polls and they say, well, Biden's up by 2 or Biden's up by 3 in all of these purple states. He's got this election in the bag. No. When it's within the margin of error, the only thing it tells you is that state is close. And things like turnout matter. Things like voter intensity matter. And Democrats are very milquetoast towards Joe Biden. People who are going to vote for Trump will walk across glass for him. And I do believe that his support is understated because people know if you go out and publicly say you're a Trump supporter, you're going to get screamed at in a restaurant. You're going to have your business attacked on Yelp. You're going to have your house spray painted, your car damaged, your property damaged. So Trump's support, I believe, is understated for where it actually is.
That has to be true. You bring up like a third party candidate against Biden, right? I don't even know who that is, right? But the Green Party person. Normally, I totally see what you're saying. Like they're going to split that vote a little bit, 1 point or whatever. But that's enough. It's probably going to be enough this go around. But is the hatred of Trump so strong, so rabid, that even the far left would unite behind Biden, even if he doesn't throw the red meat? Or do you think he still has to throw that red meat?
Well, Trump's numbers are baked into the cake. And don't forget, Trump's poll numbers were never good. They weren't good in 2016. They haven't been good throughout his presidency. And they aren't good right now. But the question is, are they good enough? And when you look at these third-party candidates, you don't have to look at them as, oh, this guy represents the libertarian point of view, or this guy represents the Green Party point of view, or peace and freedom, or whatever. You almost have to look at them as just different names on a none-of-the-above ticket. And the Bernie people who didn't vote for Hillary Clinton and the Bernie people who aren't going to vote for Joe Biden represent a bigger share of the Democratic Party than Never Trumpers do of the Republican Party. I mean, you watch cable news, and you say to yourself, oh my God, half the Republican Party hates Donald Trump's guts. No, the people that hate Donald Trump's guts, who are Republicans, all have newspaper columns or television contracts. He won a higher share of Republicans in 2016 than Hillary Clinton did of Democrats. But you never see Never Hillary Democrats on TV because that's a function of media bias. The same will be true this cycle. Trump will win a higher percentage of Republicans than Biden will win of Democrats. The question is how many of these Bernie people, how many of these left-wing Democrats end up abandoning him for third-party candidates or just staying home?
Yeah, that's interesting. So to bring it back to the debate coming up, that will force Biden to appeal to them to a certain degree. Yeah, that's interesting. We did a segment on this a while back, and I don't want to put you on the spot here. I don't have the numbers in front of me right now, but we went through some of the different swing states from 2016 and looked at how Trump underperformed against the Senate candidates in those states. So like Trump underperformed Rubio by like 6 points. Something's like does that make sense? Underperformed? Yeah. Right. So like in the party, like Rubio beat his Senate candidate by 6 points more than Trump beat Hillary. And it was like that in all the red states that he won, Wisconsin and Pennsylvania and Ohio. It was all like 1, 2, 3, 4 points. Trump underperformed. And I use that, I interpreted that, I'm curious your take, that Trump will do better than he did in 2016 in those states, because I don't see someone who voted for Trump in 2016 not voting for him this go around. But I do see the reverse of that. What do you think of that? Does that make sense?
Well, to a certain degree, you're right. And then there's also another dynamic that's at play right now. Trump is doing much better among blacks and Hispanics than he did last time around, specifically Hispanic men. I've seen any number of polls showing him splitting Hispanic men with Joe Biden, which is pretty significant in certain states. Yeah. I mean, you look at Florida, you look at Texas, he is doing very well because the media and Democrats look at the rioting on TV or the peaceful protests, and they think that Hispanics look at them and identify with the people lighting the street on fire. And that's not the way Hispanics look at that. I mean, they look at that, and especially the guys, they're totally appalled. Trump is doing better among blacks than he did in 2016. And don't forget, in 2016, he did better with blacks and Hispanics than Mitt Romney and John McCain did in 2008 and 2012. Where he's doing worse this cycle than last cycle is with older voters. And that's partly because of COVID. They're scared. It's the one part of the Republican coalition that buys into the fear porn that's being spoon-fed to them on a daily basis by the mainstream media. They think they're going to die from this virus, and they want the world shut down forever. Well, I don't know how you move someone who looks at the world that way unless it's law and order. And that is Biden's great vulnerability, law and order, because he can't come out too hard in favor of the cops and condemning the rioters on the streets. And Trump should hit that like a conga drum.
You're right. It's not only condemning the rioters, it's also pro-cop. Yeah, very good. And what I hear from you, too, is that Trump needs to do a really, really good job in justifying his approach to COVID these last few months. That's what I hear from that, and that's awesome. We got to go, John. Real quick, though. How's the media going to spin this no matter what happens?
Oh, Joe Biden has a pulse? If you take his pulse and you count to any number other than 0, he wins the debate today.
John Phillips, KABC, LA Daily News, and it's Johnny Don't Like on Twitter. Hey, John, appreciate you, man. Great stuff.
Thanks for having me.
All right, more coming up. True story, Mike Slater. Spread the word. Hey, Slater Crusaders, it is debate night. Glad you're here. Our coverage begins coming up, 7 o'clock. Jesse Kelly, followed by the one and only Bill O'Reilly. And then we're going to be airing the entire debate right here live on the 1st. And then Bill O'Reilly has his live post-debate coverage, all here on the 1st. I'm grateful you're here. Also grateful for our next guest, Brandon Tatum, former Arizona police officer, founder of the TatumReport.com, and you got to go to his Twitter. You got to follow him there, The Officer Tatum. Brandon, how are you, brother?
I'm doing well. How you doing?
Man, really good to talk to you. And I wanted to talk to you at length today about Breonna Taylor, because you've been doing an amazing job covering that story, and I'm grateful for you. But we got to talk debate today, so maybe we can come back another day and talk about Breonna, because it looks like the AG said they're going to release the tapes from the grand jury. So what do you think about that, real quick, potentially releasing the tapes?
I think it's fair. I mean, you can release, to have more transparency, but it's not going to change anything because Kenneth Walker admitted that he shot a police officer with the presumption that he didn't know who was coming into his house. He didn't know that they were exercising or executing a warrant. So nothing's going to change, in my personal opinion.
Yeah, and it's still amazing to me that people still think they got the wrong house. That's amazing. Like, they're so wrong in the facts. They still think it was the wrong house. Alas, we just talked to John Phillips, and he said tonight the number one thing Trump's got to do to land against Biden is to talk about law and order. Do you agree?
Yeah, I think that's one unique strategy that he has, because we look at what the country is going through, and we look at the stance that President Trump has taken, and he's been taking a strong stance on law and order a very long time ago. And I think that Joe Biden has taken a weak stance, or not a stance at all, when it comes to these riots and people are burning down buildings and stuff in the name of unlawfulness, not in the name of criminal justice reform, but in the name of unlawfulness. So I think if President Trump is calm, cool and collected, hit Joe Biden with stats, hit Joe Biden with his own words, I think that he'll do a tremendous job in that area.
Yeah, so Biden will say something like, "Oh no, I condemn the violence, and I've condemned it. I've condemned the violence, and I've condemned it." What do you think Trump should say back to that?
Well, he should say, well, when did you condemn it? After the chop went down in Washington? When did you condemn it? After they burned and looted around the country for months on end? Did you condemn anything in Portland, Oregon when they're protesting, or at least they're rioting and burning down their own city for 90 plus days? At what point have you taken a stance? And you've taken a stance because it's politically correct when you saw the polls going down. But you don't really care about law and order. You would have took a stance before I did. If President Trump come out and say that, then hey, I think that it'll make Biden or put Biden on the coals, and he'll have to be pressured into making a unique answer.
I remember when Trump eventually ended up sending in federal troops to, I think it was Portland. Nancy Pelosi called them stormtroopers. So even when Trump was able to take a hard stance, he was criticized for doing so. I hope Trump brings that up as well. What's your pulse, your finger on the pulse of people say when it comes to viewing these riots? Do you think, what are people thinking? Like, are they blaming Democrats? Are they blaming are they making it political in their analysis of it? Or are they just like, oh, our country's going to heck in a handbasket and let's blame Trump for that? How do you think most people are viewing this?
I think most people are looking at the Democrats, and they're looking at Democrats on the local level. You know, we don't have any problems here in the state of Arizona. But when we look at Oregon, it's like, what's going on there? And the people who live in Oregon, who live in Portland, Oregon, they're feeling the same thing. And they're like, okay, our leaders are incompetent. And when people around the country are looking at it, they go, the people in Oregon and Portland, Oregon are incompetent. And so therefore you say, okay, what are these Democrats thinking? Why is this only happening in Democratic run cities? And so people begin to wake up, and I think they can see it clear as the noonday sun. I don't know if it made it to Trump, Biden at this point for most people. But you can rest assured that there are some people that are going to blame Trump, and there are some people that are going to look at Joe Biden, even though he's not the president, and blame him for the chaos that's going on.
I hope people see it as a local issue, because it is. It definitely is. I heard the Democrats try to blame Trump for this stuff, because they'll be like, oh, this is Trump's America. And it's like, no, it's the Democrats' Portland. And I think people can put that together. I hope so. Can you speak to Lancaster for a second? As you were talking, I just thought of Lancaster, because the riots in Lancaster lasted for about, 12 hours, and that was it. What did they do that was so different from Portland?
I think that when you take a strong stance against individuals and let them know that we're not going to tolerate this for long periods of time, then I think people begin to back down. You have to be able to stand up for your city. Portland is encouraging these things to happen, right? When they come out and they burn stuff and they storm the city and they try to take over the Capitol building, the mayor and others are encouraging them and saying, no, they're peacefully protesting. These people deserve to have a voice. They're not even talking about people getting killed in these scenarios. So when you have someone that stand up strong against it and you say, okay, we'll let people peacefully protest, but at the point in which you begin to hurt other people, violate other people's constitutional rights, damage property, and create chaos, you're no longer exercising your First Amendment right. Now it's time for us to take a strong stance.
And Lancaster came down with, among other things, $1 million bail. Can you speak to that for a second from a police officer standpoint? Like, what's the difference practically between like California and New York, which are like no bail now, and on top of that, no bail because of COVID, right? But it's like no bail states and cities versus $1 million bail in Lancaster. What's the practical difference on the street when you have those different approaches?
Well, look, it's kind of like having a child, and you're rearing a child. You're an adult. You're the father, and then the child acts out of control, and you give them punishment, right? Reasonable punishment, whether it be spanking and timeout, or whatever the case may be, a reasonable punishment. And no bail is like your kid running crazy around the house, cussing you out, and you say nothing. You just, oh, little Johnny, it's okay. That's the difference in a more human sense. But when you have people who know that if they get in trouble and go to jail, they will be held accountable, they're less likely to do some of these things. They're less likely to be bold. I'm going to tell you, even as a conservative, you can go to some of these places and you say, well, I'm going to go protest and I'm going to paint over the Black Lives Matter sign because I think that the Black Lives Matter is not representing Black lives. You know you can go to jail and you'll get out the next day. It's almost encouraged to go out and do whatever you want to do because there's no lasting consequences. And I think the best analogy is like are presented with rearing children. You have to have consequences or people will run crazy.
Yeah, and Kamala was encouraging people to donate to like these GoFundMe accounts to pay the bail for the states that have a small one. Let's speak on something the president, instead of attacking Joe for the riots and stuff, hopefully Trump lifts up some of his criminal justice reform. Democrats always get credit for criminal justice reform, but Trump's done quite a bit in that regard. Can you speak to that for a minute? And is it the First Steps Act? Is that the big one? And anything else that the president's done that he should brag about?
Well, the biggest one is the First Step Act. It's the first time in, I don't know, decades that we've had legitimate prison reform on a federal level. And myself, Candace Owens, and others went down to D.C. to lobby some of the Congress members for them to, or the people in the Senate, for them to vote to get this thing to President Trump's desk, because we knew that it was incredibly important to give some relief to people who have been arrested on drug offenses. And now laws have changed. Now culture have changed. These people are still spending the rest of their life in prison. But because of President Trump, and it was in some part a bipartisan effort, but the president is the one that signed this into law. When things like this occur, you see a lot of people that have gone to prison, a lot of families getting reunited. And it's not just people getting out of jail. You know, just because President Trump signed a piece of paper, you get out of jail. No, it's recidivism reduction training or recidivism reduction courses that they have to go through to make sure that they don't reoffend, that they can come out and be better people. So Donald Trump doing that.
Give me an example. So like if you were advising the president, you'd say, President Trump, tell this story tonight about the First Step Act, so people can really understand it.
I mean, Marie Allison and others that have gotten out of prison and have had an opportunity to get a second chance. Those are the stories that President Trump needs to tell, because then that makes it personal to other individuals and they can see tangible results. Because the Democrats and Joe Biden, for 50 plus years, they do a lot of talking. And not just Democrats, Republicans too, in some cases. They do a lot of talking, but they don't have any tangible action behind it. So when President Trump has done things like that, you know, with the prison reform, it's the first step too. So in his second administration, they're going to do more steps to progressively improve. I mean, he stands up for law enforcement. Donald Trump has actually had the families of people that have been killed by police officers, whether justified or not. He has had them at the White House to talk to them about strategy moving forward. So Trump has not only hit it from the prison perspective federally, he support the police officers, and he's done things for victims that have been killed in police violence. So President Trump should tout all of his accomplishments and also mention that he has reached across the aisle in a bipartisan manner to get some of these things done, because Joe Biden is not going to have that luxury to tout any statistics related to anything prison reform.
That's it. So that's definitely the issue that lands the most. So you pin the riots on Biden, make them Biden riots, and then Trump is the guy who's against the riots and for the police. That's such a winning recipe there. All right, love that. Brandon Tatum, let's come back on, or hope you can come back on, brother. TatumReport.com, and just know that Trump will not wear a sports jacket as good looking as the one you got on right now, and that's a disappointment.
But he should.
He should. The Officer Tatum. Thanks, brother. Appreciate you.
Thanks for having me.
True story, Mike Slater. More coming up. Hey, Slater Crusaders, it's almost time. Coming up, we got our election coverage officially begins. Jesse Kelly, followed by the great Bill O'Reilly. Then, of course, we're going to air the debate in its entirety. Followed up with live post-debate coverage with the one and only Bill O'Reilly yet again. Let's take a deep breath before we begin here. Have you noticed like yourself getting a little more stressed, a little more anxious about everything? 35 days now to go. If I could just humbly offer a suggestion to get some of that stress off you, take some time to every day to read a book, read books. Get off the internet for a minute, read some books. It'll bring so much perspective, and the perspective brings peace. And I say read books. One of my dad's favorite Seinfeld scene was one of the Bizarro episode. And Elaine said, Jerry, they read. And Jerry goes, I read. And Elaine goes, books, Jerry. They read books. If you read books, you'll quickly realize that we've all done this before. There's nothing new under the sun. By the way, the line that book's from is a pretty good book to start with. With some great analysis so far today on what Trump needs to do. I think he needs to take some time and be on the offense against Biden. He doesn't want to be on the defense, but Trump also needs to take the time to talk about some of the impressive things that he's done as president. Just rattle them off. We don't have time now, but last week's special was entirely about the accomplishments that he had over the last 4 years, and there's a lot. And a lot of bipartisan ones, and a lot of them, and that's how we framed it when we did the special last week, was things that you'd think Democrats would get behind. Like a peace deal between Israel and the UAE and Bahrain? Like let's start with that. Like, how are you not okay with that one? Bringing troops home, not starting more endless wars like Joe Biden's done. Stand on these things and be proud of them, because people don't know them. People haven't heard them. And it's your job, Mr. President, like soon to take this opportunity and list them off. And don't get distracted by the pettiness. No one really cares. I mean, that's, as we talked about in the first segment, like that's just the game, right? The quips. It's just part of the game. And don't play the game, right? Trump's taxes are going to be brought up, right? I don't know why, like, this was brought up in 2016. I don't even know why this whole New York Times Trump taxes thing is even a story. He's going to say the same thing he said in 2016. I didn't pay a lot in federal income taxes. I'm smart. I paid as little as possible. So should you. Also, by the way, Biden, you wrote the tax code that people use. You wrote the tax code that you use to avoid paying taxes with your S-Corp. And also, New York Times admitted that there's no financial interest that I have with Russia whatsoever that you've been hyperventilating about for the last 4 years. So let's move on from that stupidness and instead talk about real tax reform that we've got done in my first 4 years and we're going to do more in the next, right? I mean, you just got to spin it around quick like that. Don't focus too much on the pettiness, the stupidness with taxes, right? Because Biden's going to want to drag Trump down in this. But just move on, because no one understands capital losses and passive loss deductions and tax carry forward and stuff. And it's no use explaining it. By the way, this is for another day, but people doing something like, oh, Trump's broke or whatever. It's like ridiculous. Ulysses S. Grant died broke. Thomas Jefferson was the second richest president ever. He had a 5,000-acre plantation, 200 slaves. Second richest president ever, adjusted for inflation, and behind Washington, not including Trump. But Jefferson was in so much debt when he died, he couldn't pay off his creditors. He left nothing to his daughter. He had about $2 million in debt in today's dollars when he died. No one thinks about that, right? When you think Jefferson, you don't think, oh yeah, he was really bad with money. It doesn't matter, and neither does this. But the left with their hyperventilating. And so, someone said it on Twitter yesterday, and I feel like I should retweet it every day. The guy said, I haven't seen this level of hysteria since yesterday. It's just every day another thing. And I'll end here. Coming up here, no matter what happens, it's going to be frustrating because everyone's just going to make up whatever they want in their heads. News is going to be coming at you hard out of a fire hose for the next 35 days. And it's all whatever you want it to be. This is Father Daniel Shaba. He's a priest at a Chaldean Catholic church here in San Diego. Chaldeans are Catholics from Iraq. And he showed up at his church and he saw this. He saw a bunch of spray paint on his church, and he released security footage, and a couple people dressed in black rolled up and spray painted swastikas, and they also wrote white power and Black Lives Matter and the anarchy symbol and all this stuff on the windows and doors and everything. And I saw, he posted that on his Instagram, and someone wrote on the Instagram in the comments, someone said, LOL, clearly a Republican trying to frame Democrats, how pathetic. I thought, what? And every comment was in agreement with that. And I'm like, oh wow, you just totally made up a whole thing. In your head, you made up a whole story about Republicans dressing up in black and framing, like what? So how can we both watch the same movie and have two totally, completely different interpretations? Not only opinions, again, on policy, that's totally fine, but different interpretations about what you're even looking at. That's amazing. The ability for the human brain to live in delusion, it's remarkable. And we see it in tons of different instances. Like, everyone I talk to who works in people's houses, like carpet cleaners and plumbers and stuff like that, they'll say, Slater, you'll be amazed at how many people live in hoarders' houses. And these people don't think they live in a hoarder's house. They live in delusion, right? People who weigh 600 pounds and haven't left their house in 10 years, haven't left their bed in 10 years, they think it's fine. Like the mind's ability and desire for delusion, it's remarkable. Here, I came across this quote. This is, actually guys, I don't have it here. Do you have it? This is from the book Hitler's First 100 Days, when Germans embraced the Third Reich. It's a brand new book. I just started reading it. Years later, novelist Heinrich Boll, who had been in bed himself with the flu as a 15-year-old, hold on, guys. Sorry, I got to read the whole thing. There is a part before that. My fault. Pending. Here we go. Hitler's Nazis were not the only thing spreading through town. A flu epidemic shuttered schools across Germany. Do you know that? Half of all grade school children and more than 1/3 of all teachers were absent. In Berlin, 200 grades had been sent home. Goebbels became so sick he collapsed, had to go to bed. Fever at 104. Years later, here it is, Heinrich Boll, who had been in bed himself with the flu as a 15-year-old, half-jokingly wondered whether historians had not neglected the epidemic as a key factor to explain the popular delirium accompanying Hitler's seizure to power. What? Did you know there was a massive flu that spread through at the same time as Hitler? Delirium begets delirium. And in a way, our brains love it. There sure is plenty going around today. Debate coming up. Jesse Kelly and then Bill O'Reilly beforehand. Then the big debate. And then live, Bill O'Reilly's post-debate analysis. Can't wait. Here we are. It officially begins. True story. Mike Slater, spread the word.